All right, welcome everyone. My name is Britton Kalix, and I'm the Peer Specialist Program Coordinator at Access to Independence. I work on the Wisconsin Peer Specialist Employment Initiative. So you'll notice today that in one of your corners, you probably see live on Zoom with rev.com. We're not live streaming anywhere. That's just notice that our live captioning is available. And so if you would like subtitles during this community of practice gathering, please navigate to your Zoom options under closed captioning. There should be an up arrow. And if you click that, you should have an option that says show subtitle. We also do have ASL interpreters here with us. So thank you very much to our interpreters. If you are deaf or hard of hearing, please do send a message to either myself or the interpreters so that we can get you linked up, especially as there are some breakout rooms planned for this community of practice today. So with that, I want to share one of our things here, and that is the community of practice guidelines for the supervisors one. And just a note on that too, this is a bit special today. I know this is a supervisors of certified peer specialists and certified parent peer specialist community of practice. This one really is intended to be kind of general in nature as well, knowing that not just supervisors or those already in leadership are interested in entrepreneurship and peer support and parent peer support. So welcome to everyone. With that, I'm going to share my screen here. Right. And if you can mute yourself if you're coming in, please do so. All right. And I will get us started reading these here. And if I could get some assistance in volunteers and reading as we go through these, that would be much appreciated as well. So these are the guidelines for the supervisors of CPS and CPPS community of practice. Many of these guidelines were inspired by or adapted from pieces of the Alternatives to Suicide Charter, language from Wildflower Alliance's Defining Principles, the Reading Anti-Racism Book Club connected to Outreach LGBT Community Center, and the Witnessing Whiteness Workshop. 1, centering learning, practice, and forming connections. We have come together as part of a collective of people in supervisory or support roles to peer specialists and parent peer specialists in Wisconsin to learn from each other and deepen our practice of peer supervision. All right, and I'll ask for a volunteer to unmute and join in on number 2 here.
Britton, I can take that. This is Michelle.
Thank you.
While we are learning and unlearning things, not everything we say is going to be formulated perfectly. We can use this space to grow, and we need to acknowledge the difference between intent versus impact. What was said may not have been what was heard. Our impact matters more than our intent.
Thank you.
I can do the next one.
Thank you.
Ask clarifying, open-ended questions. If you aren't sure what someone is talking about or the meaning behind their words, avoid assumptions.
And number 4?
Number 4, unlearning and having our worldviews challenged is often a component of learning alongside others. Each of us have biases. They do not necessarily reflect the character of our being. However, it is our responsibility to actively challenge them.
Thank you very much. And number 5.
I'll take number 5.
Thank you.
Speak from your own experiences. No one person can speak for an entire group of people.
I can take number 6. Give space and take space. If you notice you are talking a lot and are asking to give space for others to contribute, it is nothing against your contribution towards the group. Please be respectful if we ask you to hold your question, story, comment. If you aren't engaging in the group as much as others, challenge yourself to engage in conversation more. Take risks. That's okay.
I can take number 7. This is Jamie.
Thank you, Jamie.
Certain freedoms are enjoyed within this community of practice, such as the freedom to challenge social norms, the freedom to interpret one's own experiences in any way, and the freedom to bring our whole selves and lives into the process of learning, practice, and growth.
Awesome. I'll volunteer to take the longer one. Though this community of practice is not a support group, and the focus of our gatherings is to learn and grow in peer supervision, disclosure of struggles may take place in order to gain support from others in this community in similar roles. Therefore, we hold the following as values: a willingness to sit with people in deep distress and explore thoughts and feelings without jumping to clinical or other interventions. No assumption of illness, and not forcing a certain framework for understanding lived experience upon a person. Recognizing, honoring, and validating that many pathways to recovery, resilience, or meaningful living exist. What works for one may not work for another. Right. Okay, and could someone take 9 and 10?
Yeah, I can take 9 and 10.
Thank you.
Complete transparency around limits to privacy is maintained at all times. Additionally, we respect the privacy of others we work with and support by not telling others stories on their behalf. We can discuss situations and scenarios, but please leave individuals' names or any identifying information out. Strive to use inclusive and respectful language. The goal is to use open language that honors our differences and avoids reinforcing the negative ways that systems have labeled us. This means staying open to learning from one another how words can empower or hold us back. It also means respecting the names, pronouns, and other words people ask us to use for them.
Thank you very much. All right. So before we move on, just want to again just remind those who kind of came in as we got started that we have ASL interpretation with us today. So if you are deaf or hard of hearing, please do connect with your interpreters via the chat. That will be helpful for breakout rooms as well. We have closed captioning available. That's what that live on zoomwithrev.com means. And again, my name is Britton Calix. I'm the Peer Specialist Program Coordinator at Access to Independence. My pronouns are she, her, hers, or Z, them, zir. I am wearing a multi-gray colored shirt over a black shirt. I have brown hair and I'm wearing a headset. I'm in my office here at Access to Independence. Brandis, before we move on to our guest facilitators, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. I'm Brandis Hatcher. I'm the Peer Support Program Administrative Assistant here at Access to Independence. I have on a white hat because I have a hair appointment. Afterwards, I have on a yellow t-shirt and I have a gold mask chain and a mask around my neck. And I'm also here in my work office.
Awesome. Thank you, Brandis. So with that, we are here today to talk about entrepreneurship in peer support and parent peer support. And I'm going to add in Michelle and Lynn here, and I'll let you all introduce yourselves. Take it away.
Perfect. So my name is Lynn McLaughlin. I am a certified peer specialist and certified peer specialist trainer for the state. I am an older female with shoulder length hair wearing a very, very comfy, not professional zip up hoodie that is gray. Behind me is a bookcase that's white. And there is another little creature here named Lennon, who you may hear from time to time. He's a little Yorkie.
And I am Michelle Yates. I hate to say middle age. I don't really care for that term, but I guess that describes it. medium hair, dark brown, glasses, and I am currently outside underneath a picnic covering.
So we are actually going to start with a land acknowledgement, which I think is really important and especially appropriate today. So I'd like to begin by acknowledging the Indigenous peoples of all the lands that we are on today. We acknowledge these Indigenous communities who have stewarded this land throughout the generations and pay respect to their elders past and present. I'm coming to you from the ancestral homelands of the Menominee Indian tribe of Wisconsin. These currently occupied lands are otherwise known as Neenah, Wisconsin. While we meet today on a virtual platform, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the lands which we each call home.
All right. Thank you, Lynn. Trying to see, you can go ahead and, not sure, Britton, if I have access, there we go, thank you. Just gonna say if I have access to adjust or forward that slide.
No, but just let me know and I'll take care of it.
Awesome, thank you. In my description too, I forget everything. Also female and black tank style top. Yes, I forget everything to describe. Thank you everyone for being here. And let's give you a brief explanation of my story of why I'm a presenter, how I became an entrepreneur. I am a parent peer specialist, and I will start with why I'm outside to begin with. One, it's a beautiful day out, and I am going to enjoy every beautiful day we have left in the season, but also because as an entrepreneur, my business has gotten very busy, and I find myself meeting and attending meetings in many different places wherever I happen to be. And today it is not in my home, nor in my hometown of River Falls. It's in a different town, a different county, where this morning I met with a family, and now I've got a series of Zoom meetings. And then after those are done, I have another meeting with a family. And that is one of the nice things about being an entrepreneur, is being able to set my own schedule. And how I started this is that in 2016, my sister completed suicide, and we went to Kentucky, which is my mom's home state, to have part of the burial. And we brought my cousin's kids back with us. They kind of bookended my kids' ages. So we have 3 boys. They are currently 18, 16, and 14. My cousin's kids, they're 2 girls, same age as the oldest and same age as the youngest. Each summer that we'd go visit family, we would see the girls because they lived with their grandparents, who are my aunt and uncle. That summer, we went to see them and said, hey, can we bring them back with us for a vacation? We did that. And after a couple of weeks, we were trying to plan bringing them back. And my aunt and uncle called and said, you know, we think they'd be better off staying up there with you. So then life changed for us. And as a high school special education teacher who taught students with emotional and behavioral disorders, we thought, well, we know there will be some challenges, but we think that we can give them the support that they need, and that this would be a good spot for them. They agreed that they wanted to stay, and our boys were less than thrilled to have girls in the house, but agreed as well. And we started on that journey. We quickly learned much more about trauma than I ever knew. We learned more about the experiences that they had faced. And then we began navigating the world of children's mental health. We learned about day treatment, residential facilities, how to navigate and manage bringing a child, an adolescent, to the emergency room and having them admitted for behavioral health, suicidal ideation. We learned about the lack of support that there is for parents and for children in the mental health areas. And as we went through all of that, I had a few people tell me, wow, you know so much more than most parents because of my job. And I was actually upset by that because I thought, if I am this frustrated and overwhelmed, what do other people do? How do parents manage this? As we went through that life and those experiences, decided that once we were at a place that I could do something, that I would help other parents. And that led me to here. 3 years ago, when the parent peer specialist training began, I was one of the first trainers in the group of first trainers to be trained, to be the it was the training of trainers. So I became a trainer of parent peer specialists, and at the same time also started contracting with counties. So I learned that process, a very difficult, long process as well, of how to contract with a county, and began doing that work very part-time while I continued to teach. And now today, I am, in the last 3 years, so this is the 4th year, I have been teaching for an online school, so teaching online from home. This year, I planned to go very part-time and quickly realized that that wasn't going to work either. So I'm teaching one class right now because it is a dual credit class, which takes 6 months to get certified to teach. When that class is over at the end of October, I'm going to be done teaching, which has been a difficult choice, but it's also, I'm excited to be able to focus all of my energy on being a parent peer specialist.
Thank you, Michelle. So my story is a little bit different. I have always had an entrepreneurial and kind of rebellious spirit. The feeling of fitting into a box has always increased my anxiety and my depression. And as I'll share a little bit later, it actually was quite literally detrimental to my health. I was an incredibly young entrepreneur. My sister and I often would put together shows for my family, and yes, they had to pay admission to see us. So that's kind of where my entrepreneur spirit came from. I have owned multiple businesses. I owned a scrapbooking business. I owned a coffee shop called Higher Beans. I've done a bazillion multi-level marketing schemes. I know. And my latest journey, Dandelions, which is still the organization that I hold today, was started in 2014. And I started the organization after I completed a life coaching class. I have always been a person that people want to talk to, been a good listener or just a good connector, which is what peer support is all about. I very much recognize that life coaching and peer support, the values that both held were very, very similar. Self-determination, dignity of choice, and most importantly, that there are no broken people. There are no one is incomplete or in need of fixing. And I loved everything about that as a person who has lived experience with multiple different types of trauma, specifically in childhood. So I started the organization part-time on the weekend. I was training coaches, people to become life coaches, and then was also doing part-time coaching work with individuals. And as I'm going to be talking about a little bit later, the emotional side of becoming an entrepreneur was really heavy. So fear of, will there be enough work? Will I be making enough money? Why would they pick me? Why would they pay to spend time with me? All of those pieces showed up. So I stopped doing the part-time work. I took a full-time position with a nonprofit organization, which reminded me why I don't fit in organizations, very, very much so. I was with them 4 years and my depression became suicidal in nature. I was asked to compromise who I am to benefit the organization. I was asked to compromise what I believed. And when I pushed to hold my integrity intact, I was questioned and very often thrown under the bus. And this, coupled with the loss of my dog, my daughter going away to college, was really, really heavy. And in December of 2019, I returned to Dandelions as a trainer and a consultant and direct peer support provider. One of the things that's been really important this time around for me is understanding and being very clear on what I offer, who I am, and knowing that I bring value to organizations, to individuals, and knowing that asking for compensation is not only okay, it's necessary. We're going to talk more about that too.
We haven't talked a whole lot. I know a couple of things that Lynn and I are each individually going to cover, but I think some of the other pieces, Lynn, if you're okay, we can both kind of go back and forth. I think you have a lot of valuable experience to offer. And so I want to encourage you to add your pieces to this. I don't want to just jump in and take it. Looking at logistics when you start your own business or are considering starting your own business is really important. There are several different types of business. There's an LLC, which stands for Limited Liability Corporation. That's what I have. Sole proprietorship, social enterprise, cooperative, nonprofits, and trying to determine what's best for you. As it really what's best for you depends on what your goals are, what kind of structure you want, and a multitude of other questions. On the last slide, or no, not the last, towards the end, there are some resources, and there is a resource with the Wisconsin Small Business. It's through some of the universities, and they are a great resource to help you figure that out. If you look at that and go, I'm out, because that confuses me, and right there I'm lost. Don't worry, there are resources for help. There's websites that will, spell it out and break it all down. I don't understand all of it, so I'm not going to pretend to tell you what each of those are about. I just know that for myself, the LLC was the right choice. Lynn, do you want to? Yeah.
I was going to say, the LLC made sense to me too, because it helps to protect whatever assets you have. And I honestly have heard conflicting information there, that sometimes that's true and sometimes it's not. So I would very much encourage people to look into each form of business to find the one that best fits with what you're trying to create.
I agree. There are professional services that you might need. I started my LLC by myself without a lawyer or an accountant to start with, but I also have a husband that has a business. So I was able to ask him some of the basic questions. And so I had that benefit. Not everyone will have that. Use natural resources if you have them, and if you don't, I mentioned the one resource, the small business resource in Wisconsin. It's always Google. And then of course, paid for services and other people that you may know.
One resource that I actually was just introduced to, and I have a hunch I was introduced to it many times before and kept going, no, I'm good. No, I'm good. Is WWBIC, which is Wisconsin Women in Business, basically. I don't know what it all stands for, but I was just connected with them as I look at potentially expanding some of the things that I do. There are tax ramifications. So there's also an organization, I believe it's called SCORE, that has entrepreneurs within it that can help with a lot of these questions. One of the things that's further down on the list is definitely find a mentor or someone that can, a peer specialist mentor. How about that? That can walk along with you and answer questions is really, really helpful.
Yes, I know. As I was trying to grow and thought about having some other people join me, I talked to another parent peer specialist, Rob Kaminsky. He's in here, or I saw him join earlier, because he's got his own business in a different entity. But I talked to him about the difference between employees versus subcontractors. And he helped a lot in helping me to make that decision.
Rob, I may be contacting you, just an FYI, because that's actually one of the questions I'm looking at right now. And if Rob, if you're open to that, I may be contacting you.
Yeah, deciding what services you're going to offer, especially if you're going to work with CCS, you're going to need to learn about service arrays. And so you may need to get creative. There might be more out there than you realize, and you might be looking too narrow and thinking, well, I can just do this one thing, and then you find out there's so much more that you can offer. Or you might be like not sure of what to call your services as far as logistics goes. So finding out what that is. Also, pricing structure. I know for CCS, counties have a rate setting sheet, which was the worst part for me in getting started, because I had no idea how to complete that. And I had no idea if my final rate that it came up with was way too high or way too low or just right. And no one would tell me.
And I think there's, as far as pricing structure, I'm going to be honest, I've been all over the board with my pricing structure. I started at one price, started looking at other prices. I think it's really important. One of the things that I hold as a very deep value is being able for individual support outside of the CCS framework is sliding scale, and being able to set times or amounts that kind of run the gamut so that I'm able to help people no matter what income level they're at. That's been helpful.
Yes, I finally found the Medicaid structure online just by searching. And I don't think I added that in the resources, because there's so many different funding sources. It depends on what area you want to work in. But if that is an area and that is one of your questions, contact me and I can send you that website. It's not hidden, it's just difficult to find if you don't know where to look. And then gradually working into your business or taking a giant leap. It sounds like Lynn took a giant leap at one point, and that's where I'm at now too. I've worked into it gradually, and now I'm at the point of I've given up that safety net. The health insurance for me has been huge, because I've always carried health insurance for our family, and I had to get to a point where I could get that privately. And just the uncertainty. Being a teacher, you're always going to have a job next year. And as a parent peer specialist, what if there's no more consumers, clients, parents? What if funding changes and it all goes away? What if? But I had to lean on my faith and in trust and let go of that safety net.
I apologize. My refrigerator is making the most obnoxious noise right now. It's defrosting and I'm hearing water trickling and I'm like, what is that? So I apologize for my distraction. Yeah, I have done the all in, I have done the gradually in. And as we look at the emotional piece, I'm going to talk more about how to navigate that feeling of a safety net, being a single parent without health insurance. I have it through the state. There's some really big feels attached to that. Michelle, is there anything else on this slide that we want to touch on? I mean, I can share kind of just a fun thing as far as the name of an organization. So Dandelions came about. I made a connection with dandelions and very much found parallel meaning in a dandelion, and the dandelion that everyone looked at as a weed, and the seeking perfection in lawn care, and recognizing that dandelions in and of themselves are nutritional and they're mystical and they have a bazillion wishes in them, and they are the purest form of unconditional love when they're in the chubby little fist of a little person. So I knew I wanted it to be dandelion, came up with Dandelion Alliance. And a friend of mine is like, just smush it all together. It should be dandelions. And I didn't realize it at the time, but that was one of the best marketing decisions I ever made, because it's not a word. Dandelions is not a word. So my Google search is really, really good because it's a very unique word. I didn't know that when it came to be. But thinking of a name is important. And there's a resource on the last slide where you can actually find out if anyone else holds your name or the name that you're thinking of at the state level.
I really want to quickly jump in and also note that Lynn is the esteemed author of a children's book about this dandelion, and I highly recommend you check it out. I don't know, Lynn, if you want to say any more about that, but my little child loves this book.
I'm showing the copy of the book. I actually I'm up in the Fox Valley. There is a children's theater that is making that book into a children's performance. And I cannot wait to see a bunch of little people dressed like dandelions.
That is so great, Lynn. Thank you. I love your story. I think we can just move to the next slide.
So the emotional piece for me, in addition to being a peer specialist, I do trainings in emotional CPR, and holding the framework of ECPR, this piece became one of the most important pieces in my entrepreneurial journey, because I needed to be able to look at all of the fears that come with doing something as big and bold as entrepreneurship, taking that leap into work that you might not know. Oops, I'm sorry.
Sorry, apologies. I lost the screen share.
Oh, that's all right. Recognizing all of the fears that can come up, the fear of rejection, the fear of what do you do with the fear of not having enough work? And even though I have been doing this work this is the work of my life. All of those fears still come up for me. And the important piece, and especially as peer specialists, is recognizing when we're in that place of fear and having authentic connection, other peer support providers, people in your life that you can talk through all of the emotions that come up around it. There's also anxiety. One of the things that has helped me a great deal is regrounding myself over and over and over, coming back to the present moment and moving with the ebb and flow of inconsistent work. I have 2 contracts that are annual contracts. One of them is a grant-funded opportunity. The other is direct service providing peer support. Neither one, well, one of them is guaranteed income every month, but it is not a sustainable amount by any means. And the peer specialist work is totally dependent on the number of people in the county. So there is constantly this need to diversify my income streams and make sure that I have money coming from a number of different areas rather than saying, this is what I'm going to do. That's been really important to me. The other piece that I think is really, really important is having the courage to say no to work that does not fit with who you are. Being able to say, I'm going to pass on that contract because it would feel like it was not in alignment with who I am. Most of my career, and I have bohemian blood. I don't stay in one place for very long, and very much have shifted many, many times throughout my career. And what I came to understand is the common thing in every journey I've taken is a love of people and a love of wanting to help and a love of wanting to hear stories. So the saying no to things that don't honor that is really, really important to who I am. Another thing that's really important, and this is for anyone who is a Marianne Williamson fan, you may or may not have heard this. I learned this saying back in the early 90s. Yes, she's been around that long. It's a Yiddish expression, and it's called "Geh gesundheit." And what it means is, hello, God be with you, go in peace. Now move over, there's someone behind you. And what it has come to mean for me in business is there are people I will talk to that are very different minded than I am. And it's okay to say, I honor what you're doing and step aside. I've got to find the people that I align with. And I need to find the people that I can collaborate with. And I need to find the people that want true partnership and collaboration. And being able to say "Geh gesundheit" in the most loving way possible is really, really important. The other piece is, again, having people in your life that you can be raw with, that you can be authentic with, that you can say, I'm feeling really, really scared. Or you can say, I feel like I'm in distress. I'm overwhelmed. I don't know how I'm either going to get all this work done or I'm going to have enough work to get me through the month. There's mindfulness is such an important piece of my journey today, and always coming back to this moment, because what I have found is when I come back to this moment, I always have everything I need. And that's been my truth for the last 2 years, is in this moment, I have everything I need. Not everything I want, but everything I need. Michelle, did you want to add anything? That was a whole lot of stuff.
That's great. Thank you, Lynn. I appreciate it. Just to say too, with the emotional piece, being a parent peer and a peer specialist in itself is emotional. And so in addition, making sure that you're taking care of yourself through this, because that's where I tend to struggle the most. Working too hard, working too much, doing too much. And then I can easily get overwhelmed. And the having someone to reach out to when you feel like you're alone in your work. When I first started, I didn't know any other parent peer specialists that were actually working with counties. The other trainers that I went through the training with, I didn't know any of them doing the same kind of work I was doing. And when I would get overwhelmed and had some difficult situations happening, some of the social workers, the service facilitators would say, well, you know, talk to the people in your agency. And I'm like, I am my agency. I'm in it, and I don't know who to talk to. So it's really important to have somebody. It doesn't have to be the same work, is what the biggest thing I've learned. They don't have to do the same thing. Just someone that will listen and empathize and remind you to take care of yourself too, and not just taking care of everybody else.
The other thing that I see on this list, and it's one of my daughter and I are like the take the shot always. One of the things I had a mentor say to me very early in my entrepreneurial stuff was, don't say no to yourself. Let someone else say no to you. And my daughter has turned that into take the shot always. And knowing that, so my daughter is 21, knowing that she will contact anyone and ask questions. She has no fear in doing that. Just makes me so happy, because it took me a long time to get to the point where I could be like, you know what, I'm going to take the shot. I am going to ask for what I want. I'm going to tell them what I'm worth. I'm going to, you know, and then if it lands and it's like, oh, gig isn't a hey, it's next, you know, you kind of have to keep doing that. And it's important. The other piece that's really important to the work that I do is not taking things personal. And again, from an emotional perspective, I'd be lying if I never said that hurts. There are times where I sit with that and wonder what's wrong with me. Why aren't they jumping at this opportunity that I'm presenting to them? And that's where it's also really important to have a network of people that you can say all of those things to, and they're not going to try to fix you or judge you or move you in another direction or minimize what you're feeling in that moment. It's so important. So always take the shot. And that's true in all areas of life. And I can promise you that the more you do that, the easier it becomes and the less attached to the personal piece that you become. If you guys knew some of the stuff that I ask people, you would be, I don't know what you would be. You would be you, but you would be surprised. How about that? Always take the shot in all areas of life.
I have to tell you, I love that. Having 3 boys that play hockey since they were 3. I was going to mention that's just, it's kind of the thing in our house all the time, but it's usually around hockey, and we've turned it into life as well. So I love it.
Absolutely. Well, we are at 2:15, and I really want to give all of you a little time to sit with the emotional piece, to sit with all of the things that come up for us, and to recognize recognize any judgments you're holding towards yourself around these things, and recognize that it's okay to shift that to compassion. So we're going to put you in breakout rooms. There are 3 questions would like you to talk through. You can pick one of them in your group, or you can talk through all 3. We're going to give you 15 minutes, and you will just have the opportunity to kind of talk about what would it mean for you to be an entrepreneur. So question number 1, what would you need to be in place for you to begin the path to entrepreneurship? What supports do you have in place to lean on once you begin your journey? And what emotions show up when you think about becoming your own boss? I hate the word boss, but it's kind of cool when you are your own boss. Britton, can you help us out here?
Yes, and how, do you want it in pairs or small groups?
Why don't we say small groups? That way there's lots of opportunity for sharing.
Sounds good. And how long would you like it set up for?
I'm thinking 15 minutes or maybe 10 minutes.
Let's go 10.
Okay. Cool. So I'm setting this up for 10 minutes with a 30-second countdown. Just so you know, our co-hosts will be asked automatically to join a Zoom or a breakout room as well. Just pausing for talking with our interpreters. Do you have anyone you're paired with right now?
No, no one has messaged us, letting us know.
Thank you so much. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and open those up. And here we go. Lynn, and I was thinking about a lot of things as I was talking. Let me stop the recording really quick. All right, welcome back, everyone. So Lynn has asked me to, Lynn's asked me to facilitate a little bit of a debrief after that breakout room. So I just want to hear from people. Sorry, the rooms got more uneven than expected. One had only 2 people, one had 1 person because not everyone joined a breakout room. But I still hope the conversations were illuminating and inspiring and informative. So just want to hear from people. There were 3 questions. It was, what would need to be in place for you to begin the path to entrepreneurship? And then what supports do you have in place to lean on once you begin that journey? And then what emotions show up when you think about becoming your own boss, right? And so let's take that first one, just what needs to be in place for you to even begin this path? Who discussed that question, and who would like to share?
Hi, this is Amy Close. I was in a group and we discussed the first question, and we talked a lot about needing a mentor and how to find a mentor. Also, different ideas regarding how to learn about setting up a business, learning to know about credentials, HIPAA, making sure that you get connected in your area with different organizations, as well as having a clear focus, a mission. I thought this was a great idea, knowing your elevator speech that Tara had mentioned. So anybody else can have any other suggestions to what we talked about?
Yeah, thank you, Amy. Yeah, who else?
In my group.
Oh, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
In our group, hi Tina, we talked about that we would know when it was the right time. Like, we have ideas and thoughts of what we might want to do, but we will know, like, it will just happen, in that maybe we'll meet something or we'll find a place that we want to be, and then that will be where we go from there.
Yeah, so a level of intuitive knowing and like when the time is right.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks. What else did people come to?
A person in our group said, make sure you have the appropriate paperwork and everything in order. Just everything exactly. And I absolutely agree. So then you don't have to go backwards. Just get it done right. Make sure the professionals are handling that part. And then you just go with your passion and your dream. So that one of them.
So you're really wanting to make sure that you're not having to go back and redo a lot of the work that might have been helpful in the beginning. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thanks. Anybody else have some thoughts on that? And I guess with that, I have a question of like, where is the room for imperfection in that process? Like, we don't all start out with the same resources, right? And so how do you navigate that? Was that part of your conversation?
I want to just say, be accepting of mistakes and imperfection, and be ready to say, I don't know, or I'm sorry, I have no idea, because I've said that so many times. I've learned so much, and I know that I still have lots and lots and lots to learn. I just keep learning and keep asking.
Yeah, thank you, Michelle. All right. And so what supports do you have in place to lean on when you're in it? And for those who are already doing this entrepreneurship work in peer support or parent peer support, or even outside of peer support or parent peer support settings, what supports really sustain you when it gets rough?
For me, it's reaching out to other entrepreneurs and providers who are going through the same thing and maybe have different knowledge than I have or different perspective, and that helps.
So the relationships you've built with other people become so vital, and not just those networking relationships, but other people who are also going out onto that path. Yeah. Thank you.
I love that Tara just put family, friends, and other entrepreneurs and self-care breaks. I think one of the different pieces of my business today than in the past is intentional stopping and recognizing who I am and what I'm doing, and not that grind culture of go out there and get it and be aggressive, and no, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. And Tara also said, enjoy the fruits of your labor, right? Yeah. And what does that mean? And what does that look like for you? Tara, do you want to say any more on that?
So my subcontractor and I that I have, we finally said, instead of saying we should get together monthly, we're going to make them mandatory. Monthly mental health meetings, and we always choose to make them at some place that we both would enjoy being at. So not on Zoom, and not, like a library, which is fine, but just someplace kind of fun and nice and enjoyable, so that we just debrief or talk about not work or whatever we choose to do, but just to get together for 2 hours a month to do that.
Yeah, and that's okay, Tara, no worries. And then that last question, there was, what emotions show up when you think about becoming your own boss? What emotions are there for people who are either going into this or have gone into this or thinking about it?
I think there's multiple. There's good ones and ones that you're not so sure of. There's excitement, there's fear, there's how are the people going to react to me? And I just think that if there's any negative coming at you, do not give up. Keep going, because you could be told so many times, and that one yes could be helping your whole dream come true and helping others and whichever. So I think there's multiple emotions that come with it. And the main thing is you just got to keep showing up for yourself.
It's interesting about what you just shared, Tina. And yes, everything you just shared. is that one yes can make a difference and that one no can make a difference. Like I said, that being able to say, no, that's not the way I am, that's not who I am, that's not what I believe, can open the door for a really powerful yes.
Yeah, I see feelings of pressure and stress mentioned in the chat. So Michelle, I love what you said too, because I think about that whenever I thought about myself doing that, kind of getting out of the nonprofit world, right? Of like, I don't want to be a boss to myself. Like I need to like navigate with some self-compassion, more like leaning into mutual accountability rather than like a boss kind of relationship, right? I'm wondering what that means for you though. Like that's what came up for me when I read that, but what does that mean for you?
Both, like that whole, well, I don't want to be bossy. And also that lack of confidence that I could be in that position successfully, which a lot of people that don't know me really well would go, what? I once had someone tell me, I thought you were the most confident person I've ever known in my life until I got to know you.
Thanks. Awesome.
Yeah, Mary Beth and I had a really cool conversation about that kind of what it means to like be your own boss and have to have that discipline that it takes to really like form that commitment with the work. And we're both in the same place of like looking like the edge of the pool kind of, but like looking at folks who have done it and not having an example to go by, which can be a really good and a really not so great thing. And for me, I landed in the place where like at the place my recovery is at, I've been dabbling with this idea of entrepreneurship for the last year and like attending some seminars and like listening to people and just really trying to take in information. And I've decided like I need to do more self-work on my own self so that my job does not become my identity. Because I'm very good at doing that. And I love the work. And I think the work we do is being ourselves as people, showing up fully in the world. And I just want to have a stronger commitment to myself before becoming an entrepreneur. And that is partially because of some examples that I've seen from other folks who are in entrepreneurship or just what I've observed their level of commitment to self is. And I'm just turning 30 this year, so I'm just learning how to be an adult. And in trauma recovery and trauma healing, I think it's so much about identity formation and rechanging those core beliefs. And I don't think that I'm not ready, but I think there's never a ready time, but I think I'll intuitively know when I possess the capacity that I can do it in a way that feels comfortable and authentic and honoring of the path I'm on, instead of potentially have me encounter several setbacks because I didn't condition myself properly before the race.
A lot of self-awareness shown there and reflection, right? About like, what's going to serve me most at this time and what am I learning right now? And how will that make me more like just ready for change when that's called for? So. Yeah.
And I was going to say, Zay, your self-awareness is like a bazillion times what mine was when I started. Because I was still like walking in muck. And so I love that I think there's a lot of value in being really intentional about what we're doing and why we're doing it and who we are and what we want to offer the world. So I love everything you just shared. That was beautiful.
Well, and I see Tara's hand. Tara, I'm going to pin you too.
Listening to what Zay said made me think about where I'm at. That's kind of a version of that. That for me, I started out a solo entrepreneur, and things have gotten to the point where I have to bring on other folks to expand and keep doing the work. And so I have to right now struggle with how do I pull myself and my self-identity out of the organization in a certain kind of way. And what is my organizational identity? Like, what is that outside of Tara Wilhelmi? And so that has been an interesting, different type of insight and self-journey to be able to do that.
That's huge, Tara. Yeah, thank you.
And I love what Tara and Lynn both said, because I think it's so much just about just like any other artistic venture. It's like, it's really a process that everyone has. And I've always been admittedly a very fear-driven person and an observationally based person. So I will study, and I'm a perfectionist in recovery. So I'm studying and I'm noting and I'm acknowledging and I'm creating awareness. And then the fear is like, when am I going to do the thing? And I need to have a level of preparedness about myself because I'm used to stumbling into things without any, just all passion and no planning. So it's strategy and having to create self-awareness, and based in like a humility of knowing what my limitations are is what I'm working on right now. And then when I feel like I can go into a place, I want to be able to ask for help, and I want to know who to ask and how I should ask. And my fault is being too careful in some ways. Absolutely. I want to plan stuff and I want it to feel right when I do it. And I know there's never a right time, but I think of it kind of like as having a child, and I don't have a child, but I have been a step parent, and there's never a good time. But when the time comes, I want to be the most prepared I can be to have the best outcome that feels good for me, I guess. But everyone's process is different. And I love that. I think respecting everyone's different journey is so important. And that's kind of where we have that non-monolithic culture.
Yeah.
Thank you. See, Anna mentions that too, like with the whole waiting until the time is right and stuff, and like there's no right time. But and I've done the same thing as far as growing and when to grow and how to grow. And I've really just sat with it and decided that when it's right and when it's supposed to, things will happen that kind of push me that direction. And it has, it's occurred that way. So I haven't been out, beating the streets and marketing and trying to get, families to work with. It's come to me, and that's how I've known it's right. So you're okay thinking that. Don't worry about right time. It may not be right. Actually, I didn't feel like it was right because I wasn't quite ready to be done teaching. I just knew it was right because it was here.
I'm glad you said that, because for me, sometimes the time is literally right when I decide the time is right too.
And isn't it also, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead,
Amy.
I was just thinking as I was listening, it's also about taking a risk. And that's always hard. And I know for me, I also do a lot of analysis and thinking, and I have good ideas, but actually making that plunge is sometimes hard. But I think that also is related to some of the fear or lack of confidence, or the fact that you haven't, had your own business before. So dealing with all of those things is hard, but I think sometimes it's kind of not forcing yourself to make a risk, but you've got to do it at some point. You can't just always think about it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I think one of the pieces of life that I find most endearing about being a human being is the awkward, the uncomfortable, the messy. I love that. I don't know why I love that, but I do. And being able to be uncomfortable and be extending self-compassion and empathy to myself, and recognizing, of course, you don't know that yet, Lynn, you haven't learned it. And all of that through the process is just really important too. So I'm thinking, Britton, could you share the PowerPoint again? We've got one more piece that we're going to cover and then open it up for some questions.
The last piece we're going to cover is kind of coming up here is the financial piece. And that can be one of the scariest and emotional challenges in starting your own business. And oftentimes, like my husband and I have talked about this, that our parents, and I think this is a generational thing, didn't really talk about money. They paid the bills, they took care of whatever the challenges were, and they didn't talk to us. And we were in the generation of, on college campuses, people stood there and had you fill out this piece of paper and gave you a prize, and then you had a credit card in the mail 2 days later. And we managed through that as we got together and managed our debt. And so we've done the opposite with our children, which is be open about finances and we're hoping that it has a better result. And so with that idea as well, we want to be open about the financial piece, about having your own business. People don't always like to talk about that, but it's a real part and it's a real fear. And so it's a few things. Do you need to continue with your current job? And when I've brought on one subcontractor and I'm going to be bringing on another, that's one of the first things I tell them is don't quit your job. I cannot promise you a certain number of parents, of families to work with. CCS tends to call them consumers, and I don't like that word. So I either say client or parent or family. And so continuing with a job until a person is comfortable leaving, and that's different for everybody. Health insurance can be really challenging. I like health insurance, of course. I've never liked learning about dealing with and managing health insurance, even when I was employed at schools. And I dislike obtaining my own health insurance even less, but it's a necessary thing. And so looking at that, there are many different options. And is that something that you need or not? It's not cheap. Having family health insurance is quite expensive. So I had to get to a point where I knew I have to make X amount to pay for private health insurance before I can quit teaching. Income taxes. So when you have your own business, like working for example, for CCS, well, not working for, contracting with CCS, I get a check and it does not take out income taxes. It is the gross amount. And I have to budget for how much of that is going to be required by the state and the federal government to pay for the income taxes. And either pay that quarterly or keep that in the savings. Yes, thank you. Do you need to have some money to get started? Well, you need a little bit because there's going to be some upfront costs. And so knowing that ahead of time and knowing what that amount is, doing that research. There's a cost to creating your LLC. And there's a yearly cost for that. Getting your liability insurances, you'll pay that up front. Where and when you'll open a business account, knowing, at first I didn't because I didn't have a lot coming in. And so we just ran it through my personal because it was just me. Once I had a subcontractor though, I opened a business account and made everything official. And I will tell you, one of my weakest areas in life is finances and numbers. I don't like them. I like people. And so I got a bookkeeper. It's worth the cost for me because then I know that things are taken care of because I am paying someone else too. And I don't want that to be messed up. Like if it's messed up for me, that's on me. But if it's messed up for that person, I don't want that to happen. Where will you get commercial and general liability insurance and professional liability insurance? As a parent peer specialist, the professional liability insurance I found to be the most difficult because when you tell an insurance company that what you do, they go, so you're a therapist. No, I'm not a therapist. Okay, so you're a recovery coach. No, but not a recovery coach. So what are you? Well, I'm a peer specialist. Well, we don't cover that. Well, it's under mental health stuff. It's like support. We don't have that listed. So it's a recovery or it's a therapist. And I've been around and around and around with insurance companies. So talking to someone else.
Sorry, y'all. I see
Nothing.
everything's
Nothing. All of this is relevant. The other thing is talk to people. The health insurance piece, I will be transparent in that I have state insurance and it covers myself and my daughter. and it is 100% catastrophe insurance. I have a $16,000 deductible. The reality is my daughter and I, the amount of money that I can put aside in a health savings account for when she has a cold or she ended up having a cyst on her ear, the amount of money that I could put in a health savings account and be able to pay cash for all of that was worth it to me, rather than having all of my money go to an insurance company that I'm not even going to utilize, or they're not going to cover very much. So I think there's a lot of different options around health insurance. I also think there are, I don't know about different areas of the state. In the Fox Valley, we have healthcare professionals that take cash. They don't even go through insurance companies. So when my daughter had an ear infection, she goes in, I pay $100 and we're done. There's no insurance paperwork. It's just beautiful and simple and takes a lot of the challenges of health insurance off the plate. So don't assume that you need to get health insurance comparable with that's offered in a workplace. There are a lot of different ways you can get around making sure that you have everything you need.
I agree, yes. And I'm glad you brought up your type of health insurance, Lynn. That is absolutely an option, because, you know, I have the type of health insurance I have because I still have 2 boys in hockey and one of them is accident prone. And so we have a different family situation. It really depends on what your needs are. So you get whatever your needs are. Don't be afraid to talk about finances. Number 1 piece of advice here, just talk about it, ask. All right.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Those of you who have even more knowledge and experience than I do, when it comes to the professional liability insurance, I was watching a training and there was something said that kind of implied that that's for people who are licensed professionals. So do we as peer specialists not need that, or is it still recommended to have it?
As far as I know, when I contracted with the consortium that's part of Western Wisconsin, like Chippewa, Dunn, Pierce, Pepin, it's 9 different counties. They required like general commercial liability and professional liability. Was what I like had in my checklist. That could be different based on each county. It could be different on if you're but if you are a peer specialist and you don't have, what service arrays you're using, if you don't have another license. So maybe that's different for me, but for my contract, it was a requirement. That's a good question. Lynn, what are you required to have?
So I have general liability and I work with a consortium of 3 counties. And there is an organization called NADAC. It's NAADAC, which is specific to substance use, but they have, my insurance is relatively inexpensive in that I can get it by becoming a NADAC member. It's literally peer support insurance and it covers me up to $1 million. So that's kind of the route I went. It's very specific to peer support work, which I greatly appreciated.
And is that peer support mental health only too, or primarily substance folk?
It covers both.
Okay.
Thank you. That was the organization I found that was the most helpful as well.
Any other questions before we wrap up today?
I have one. How much is that insurance?
Oh my gosh, please don't tell me to have to use my memory.
Oh, I apologize for that.
No, off the top of my head, I would say it's
12,000 a year?
No, I
20?
would say like 300 to 500 a year.
Okay, I shot that big number, so I knew you would come back with something, whether you remembered it or not.
I would remember if it was 12 grand.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I want to say around 300 a year.
Okay,
Yep. Somewhere there.
That's very reasonable. And that's $1 million, you said?
Yep.
Okay, thank you guys very much.
Bryn, do you mind moving to the next slide with our contact information? Oh, resources, thank you. Yeah, the Wisconsin Small Business Development Center. That's what I was trying to think of the whole name. And then the next slide is our contact information. I think, Bryn, can you let them know how they can access these slides again to get those resources?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, the slides right now are also linked on our Community of Practice page. And so we'll keep that up there with this on the Supervisors of CPS and CPPS slot, at least for another week or so before the next one goes out there. But you can click on the PowerPoints from there as well. I also just want to quickly say, I know I put it in the chat for those, but for those who can't view the chat, we are actually probably moving towards, at least for some of the Supervisors of CPS and CPPS communities of practice, offering CEU documentation, certificates of participation. This is one of those. And so I put the link to the evaluation form that's needed for that in the chat. I'll also be, we'll get an email out to everyone who registered for this as well. And for those who missed some or are watching this within the next 2 weeks before that form closes, just know that if you watch the recording and submit the evaluation within the next 2 weeks, that you can still get that certificate of participation.
Thank you everyone for being with us. This was fun.
Yes, thank you so much. I will say, if you email me, just please be a little bit patient. It might take me like 2 to 3 days. It's just that I'm busy right now, but I will answer you.
Well, thank you both so much for this time today. I know this was one of our most requested topics, actually, on our past evaluations for both our Community of Practice gatherings was entrepreneurship and talking about that more. So glad we could have you come in. I'm sure we could have this as a theme too, and have other entrepreneurs come in and share their experiences and their thoughts, because there are lots of people already doing this. But thank you so much again. It was a pleasure having you here.
Thank you so much. It's very valuable.
Yeah, and thank you once again for interpreters. That's something we just want to make sure is happening as we go forward and have these recorded as well. So much appreciation to our interpreters from Purple today. Okay, thank you everyone. We'll see you later, and we'll send out that link again for the evaluation.